In early autumn, I decided to leave the city and spend a week in the old house that once belonged to my great-grandmother. The house was located on the edge of an ancient Slavic forest, where people rarely ventured, not far from a small village a few kilometers away. In these parts, there had long been legends about forest spirits and ancient creatures, but I dismissed it all as old fairy tales. I needed peace and quiet, and the house in the woods seemed like the perfect retreat from the bustle. The house was old, with a crooked roof and wooden shutters, but inside it still smelled of ancient wood and herbs, as if those smells were holding the walls together. Behind the house there was a path leading deep into the forest. Locals always warned that it was better not to wander in the woods at night, especially on the eve of big holidays when nature's powers were strong and the boundary between worlds grew thin. On the third night of my stay, I heard strange sounds outside, like the rustling of branches or a faint cry. I didn't pay much attention to it and tried to sleep, but soon the house filled with a strange hum, like the whisper of many voices coming from beneath the floor. I turned on my flashlight and went downstairs, trying to figure out what was happening. The forest outside the windows seemed darker than usual, and the air itself felt heavier. When I stepped out onto the porch, I noticed a figure in the shadow of the trees, a tall man in a long cloak, his face hidden by a dark fabric, but his eyes glowed like embers. He slowly moved toward me, and with each step, it felt like the ground beneath me started to tremble. I stood frozen in place, and then I heard a voice behind me, soft and whispering like the wind. "Don't go near him. It's the Leshy, the forest guardian. He doesn't like strangers." I turned sharply and saw an old woman in a headscarf standing by the door. Her face was wrinkled like the bark of an ancient oak, and she reached out her hand to me. "Go back inside before it's too late." But I couldn't move. The Leshy was too close. He didn't seem malevolent, but in his eyes there was an ancient power I couldn't resist. Suddenly, everything around me was covered in mist, and I found myself in darkness. It felt like I was lost in the heart of the forest. The old woman's voice echoed in my ears, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. Silhouettes appeared around me, creatures from Slavic legends, thin as smoke, surrounding me while softly singing ancient songs whose meaning was unknown to me. They moved closer and closer until I felt the cold of their touch. Desperately, I tried to return to the house, but every step took me deeper into the forest. I felt as though I would soon disappear among these ancient spirits. And then I remembered my grandmother's words. She had once said that the Leshy lets go of those who respect the forest and offer gifts. I dropped to my knees, pulled off the old charm my grandmother had given me from around my neck, and placed it on the ground before me. The world suddenly stood still. The Leshy stopped and looked at me with his fiery gaze, then slowly turned and disappeared into the mist. The shadows around me began to dissolve as well, and I saw the old house once more. I returned inside and locked the door with all the bolts. I couldn't sleep until morning, listening to the forest whispering its ancient secrets outside. The next day, I packed my things and left the place. When I was leaving, I found my charm neatly placed on the doorstep, surrounded by leaves.